comments may do so at public hearing at rcsdk12.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahima. Good evening to everyone. This is the RCSD Academic and Financial Plan update representing the plans for the 23-24 school year. As usual, I like to start with, the responsibilities of the monitor. I think you're pretty familiar with those. But one of the main responsibilities is the creation of an academic and financial plan. We are gathered here tonight to hear feedback about the third iteration of the academic and financial plan for the 23-24 school year. Beyond the responsibilities, I want to get right to the plan itself. Not familiar with this. I think we have the wrong presentation up. But in any case, the academic plan is made up of 5 different tables. Table 5 is turnaround leadership. Table 7, talent development. Table 9, instructional transformation. Table 11, culture shift. And Table 13, systems, resources, and structures. The financial plan is broken up into general fiscal practices, governance and programmatic decision-making, legal and financial audits, budget development, organizational structures and internal efficiencies, and transportation. What's most important for this evening is that there were modifications made to the plan that was shared with you 2 weeks ago, I believe, or a few days ago at the ESSA meeting. But I want to give a little more explanation as to why some of those modifications took place. Some recommendations were changed to reflect the more intentional actions being taken or needed to be taken by the district or the board. Recommendations were also changed because of the date or the frequency. So maybe the date was from last year, and so the recommendation was updated to represent the coming year. Or maybe it was that the recommendation was something that the district had to report monthly, and now they report it quarterly, or they reported it weekly, and now they report it yearly. So those kind of modifications were made. In addition, some modifications were changed to reflect a progression in action. So maybe you had to make a plan, now you have to implement that plan, or now you had a plan and now you have to evaluate that plan. Other changes were made so that the administration and the board could understand the recommendation a little better, so there was more specificity around the language in the recommendation. And other recommendations were modified to reflect a combination, that maybe some of the language in one recommendation looked very similar to language in another recommendation, so those recommendations were combined. And finally, recommendations were modified if part of the recommendation was already completed. So I just wanted to give that explanation as to why some of the modifications were modified. Other recommendations, remain current and they were unchanged, and then there were other recommendations that were eliminated. Those were eliminated because they were outdated, or because the work had been completed, or because they had to change and be incorporated into another recommendation. Right now I want to talk about 4 new recommendations. There were only 4 new recommendations added to the 23-24 plan. 2 in the academic plan and 2 in the financial plan. In the academic plan, the district administration shall secure services of a third party to conduct district-wide head count of all district staff to determine number, location, and functionality for all out-of-classroom positions. And the date of that was for February 1st, 2024. And the intent of that particular recommendation was to make sure that the district understands who is working in the district, what is their job, what is their function, and what is their value to the district, so that there was a fancy way really to say a head count. But I wanted it to be more than a head count. I wanted to make sure that you understood what each of those positions were required to do and support, and how they would support the district. Table 13, recommendation 24, is the second new recommendation in the academic plan. And that plan, that recommendation asks for the district shall initiate a revised plan to ensure that all students reports of academic achievement are available to parents in uniform, timely, efficient, and user-friendly format. That means whether it's a report card or a test that your child took, or any state exams or local exams that your students are taking, that information becomes available in multiple forms and multiple languages, so that parents and families have a better understanding of the academic achievement or the progress, or unfortunately, some cases, a lack of some students, and so that parents can understand that and perhaps act upon that or have informed conversations with teachers and administration at the schools. There were 2 new recommendations added for finance. One, effective immediately, the Executive Cabinet and the State Monitor shall review all election to work agreements, we call them EWAs, annually to better understand opportunities to support receivership schools. Receivership schools have additional rights and additional waivers and responsibilities, and EWAs are one of those opportunities for receiverships schools to have opportunities to do things differently in their schools than schools that do not have that designation. And this recommendation asks administration to review all those type of agreements at each school so one can understand what those agreements are and how they can be incorporated and shared with administration to see how they can support those agreements. The final new recommendation for the 23-24 year is also effective immediately. Districts shall annually create a budget and a complementary budget material showcasing the following. And this is another attempt to make the budget transparent, the budget process transparent, and user-friendly to all constituents within the district. It should contain programmatic information, what is the money purchasing, so that individuals can understand how much of the budget is going for new books or a new program or to pay for staff, and it's very specific and laid out so that individuals can easily understand. School-level budget allocations so that individuals can understand how much money is going to each school, how much money has been allotted to my child's school, what is that money going to be used for at my child's school. That is very open and multiple languages, easy for individuals to understand and support. And it lists a few other things. Like I said, there were only 4 new recommendations, and nothing has changed from the last week when I presented these plans, just some editing. And other than that, the recommendations remain the same. 1 or 2 recommendations to the recommendations or feedback recommendations have been incorporated, and those came from staff members and individuals at State Ed. So with that, I would also say that, you know, there's a state monitor at rcsdk12.org email that one can access and continue. You know, we don't have to just hear your feedback when these plans are updated. We should hear your feedback about these plans or other things that are going on in the schools in the district throughout the year. And I hope that you access that email address or other forms that you have at your schools or offices so that we can get feedback about the plan. The plans are allowed to be modified among mutual agreement between the state monitor and the superintendent, and also ultimately by the Commissioner of Education for New York. And with that, I will end this, this presentation and look forward to any feedback that others may have.
At this time, we have 1 speaker in person here, Ms. Laura Smith, if you would like to come up. And then there is 1 written comment submitted, which is accessible via board docs. Ms. Smith, you'll have 3 minutes.
Is that right? Okay. All right. Hi, my name is Laura Smith, and I am an RCSD parent. I appreciate some of the format changes in this version of the plan. I could more easily see what had changed in the modifications and some evidence of which ones were not progressing as they should. So thank you for that. However, there is more that could be done to make this document accessible to families. There isn't time to discuss them here, but I'm happy to give some best practice suggestions so that families understand how this plan operates and where it stands on implementation. While there is plenty in this plan that I agree needs to happen, and plenty in this plan which concerns me because it hasn't already yet happened, there is one thing that I think is missing from this plan. There are no recommendations related to the structural issues that hamper the district in improving. So, for example, your recommendation regarding the superintendent engagement with parent groups. The inclusion of PTA, PTOs is completely impractical for any kind of meaningful engagement due to the size of the district. In Penfield, with roughly 4,500 students, you have 4 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 1 high school. In that size model, a Penfield school board member is able to attend every PTA meeting. So that is where the 7 board member model is most effective, because it allows for feedback throughout the organization and constant school level engagement with families. Using the same model in a district of our size means distance is created between families and administration and the board. So assuming your recommendation is wanting to repair that communication breakdown, it needs to be amended in a way that addresses 2 questions. How many senior administrative staff would it take to be able to have the same level of parent engagement as our neighbours in Penfield? And secondly, how would they feedback what they have learnt to impact the decision-making processes in the district? So our district is basically structured to fail due to decisions made well beyond this boardroom. So your recommendation regarding the chief officers seems to acknowledge that we need some better structures, but I worry that it's a band-aid solution. Which successful city district are we using to benchmark us against, to give these recommendations? Because the recommendations risk asking us to reinvent the wheel unless we use what is already working elsewhere. And if we don't know the solutions that are working, then we need to seek them out. And I noticed in your comments, you said that the district needed to find that, and I will just push a little bit to see if you could help the district with that. There's a huge number of recommendations, there's a lot of work to do, but I think that that's where your expertise is to come in, to really lift some of those things, particularly around the racial issues and making sure that we see equitable education. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. That concludes the speakers for this evening. Do you want to close it?
The hearing is now closed. For the business meeting. Thank you, everybody,